I guess, agenda. Okay. So the first thing is,
If you want to announce the date and the time.
today's, on a roll. Today's January 24th. It's about 6:04, and we could probably take roll for who's here so far.
I'm not used to being Laura. Hold on. Vicki Yates.
Here.
Derek Metzen.
Here.
Bob Seward.
Here.
John McLaughlin.
Here.
And Christina Robertson staff.
Okay.
All right.
We can start with elections.
Right. So new year. We need to make a motion for a chair and a vice chair, and the vice chair really's role is to be chair when the vice chair is unavailable. And I'm open for discussion and any motions.
So who's not here?
Cindy.
Cindy,
Yeah.
do we do this? I don't really care. Should we wait till we're all here to do this, or does it matter?
If you want, we could wait. It's hard to guess when a month you'll have all five. I mean,
Right.
having four is pretty good.
It's surprising that she didn't call. But, we could go ahead.
There is nothing for this month, so we could just have initial discussions and then forward it to next month, since we don't have to,
It doesn't matter.
move.
Okay, well, I don't know if I should put this in the form of a motion
Okay.
or just discussion. I'd like to see John stay as the chair, if you'll do it.
I'm fine to do whatever. I don't know if these fellas are
Fine
tired
with
of me.
No, I actually was thinking the same thing. Well, just wasn't sure if you wanted to do it. So that's
No,
good.
I'm happy to, as long as you're willing to put up with me and trying to be expeditious. If that doesn't bother anybody, I can continue with being that way. If you want.
Yes
If that
and
was
yes.
the case, then someone needs to, and we haven't had since Ken left, a vice chair. So someone needs to be a vice chair. Vicky's always going on cruises and hospital stays. When someone says, I'm going on a cruise for 5 to 7 days, you get jealous. This is the first time I've heard someone say, I'm going to the hospital for 5 to 7 days. Or hopefully you'll be around. Does anybody want to volunteer to be a vice chair? Or make a motion of somebody?
Choose one of you two.
Can we choose Cindy in her absence?
Well, we can, but I would wait till next month to vote on that.
I could, if nobody cared, I could actually come up with a number between 1 and 100 if you want. I would be willing to nominate any three. Does anybody have a? And it's really, if I'm not around, you just got to be in charge. And I don't have much of a life, and I'm usually around a lot. So.
I'm just too new at this business. I really don't want to be in that position.
Well, then you two.
Yeah.
One of you guys want to do it?
I can do it, but I don't know if my attendance is going to be stellar given the next couple of months.
Yeah, but if I'm not here and you happen to be here, you could be very lawyerly and scare people off.
No, I'm the nice lawyer. That's on the tape.
On the take?
On the tape.
Well, then, if you're questioning that, then would you like to do it?
Like to know, but I will if no one else is going to.
Okay.
Going back to our conversation.
Yeah, well,
Unless you want to do it.
I say we give Cindy a chance if she's interested.
We can easily do that. We can make one motion tonight for chair and table the vice chair for
Yeah.
next month if we want to
Okay,
do that.
let's do that.
yeah. And
Were you going to say something?
well, I know you do it if you need to. It may be a little more complicated for you. If you need me to, I'll do it, but I think we should give Cindy a shot.
Yeah.
Okay.
I agree.
Alrighty.
All right, so maybe have a motion for the chair.
Oh, we have to.
I move that John McLaughlin remain as our fearless chairperson this year.
Another term as chair.
And I'll second that.
All right. Call the vote. Bob
Aye.
Stewart?
Yes.
Derek Metzen?
Aye.
Cindy Toll? Oh, Cindy Toll. Sorry, I'm looking at you, Vicki. Yates.
Aye.
And Chair McLaughlin.
Aye.
Motion carries. For 2012, the chair of HRB will be John McLaughlin. All right.
I'd be happy to have her do that, but I don't know if we should do that without her.
We'll just table the
Should we
vice.
wait?
We'll
Okay,
just
okay,
table
move
the
it.
vice
Yeah,
chair
that'll
election
work.
for next meeting, which is fine.
Okay, so we're done with that.
Yep.
We'll do that next time. So then we're on to number 2.
All right. So great news on Ermitinger House. I always put this up as an agenda item every meeting because I like to keep the Historic Review Board in on the loop. And since the last time we met in December, there has been some updates, and I wanted to let you know. In the middle of November, an RFP was sent out for architectural and engineering teams to bid on the plans for the Ermitinger rehab. That initial money was identified by the City Commission in their 2011-2012 budget. And a very, very competitive process ensued. We had 9 very qualified teams. I don't think I've ever been involved with an RFP review that was so qualified. So they all met the Secretary of standards. They'd all worked on National Register projects, and I would have been happy to have any of them. But we still needed to pick somebody.
Okay.
So
I'm sorry, were all of them local?
no, they weren't all local. Some were local, and some were, I'd say majority are local. The person that we did choose, she is local, but her firm is not. So there was a couple of those. Her firm's headquarters are not in Portland, but she is basically the Portland office. So we, through a very rigorous scoring process and review process, Architectural Resource Group out of San Francisco, but Maya Foti, who is in the Portland office, was chosen to move forward. And it's really the best of both worlds. She is kind of, small one person here, but when she needs to, she can draw on the Architectural Resources Group out of San Francisco, which is a very large conservation, heritage, and preservation firm that works with museums and preservation and heritage projects all over the nation and the world. So she can kind of dip into those resources when needed, but kind of work on her own for the normal plans. She's also currently working with Fort Vancouver on the Army Barracks. So she has a really good working relationship with the National Park Service. So it's also really important to us to continue that conversation with the Park Service as we move forward, to potentially still have them as the end user. So she scored high, and also cost. So that kind of led us to choose Architectural Resource Group. We've had some initial conversations with her. We've scoped out the project, and it's going to the City Commission at the February 1st meeting. So the contract should be signed right after that.
So they're going to take care of drawings, engineering,
All the
everything.
plans, problem solving, looking at the foundation issue, looking at all the code issues, looking at ADA issues, coordinating with the Park Service, how, if they were the end users, how would these issues impact the design. So she's kind of balancing all these divergent facts and needs. And so we're
getting ready for
So
potential
it'll be a
restoration.
final document bid ready package. And then we will be moving forward with assessing, can it be done in phases? Is this something where we have to keep applying for different grants, so it really needs to be done in all one package? That's the kind of thing she's going to be researching through this next couple months. The goal is to have the architectural and engineering package done, I think late May, early June, is kind of the goal.
What was the budget for this?
It's about $50,000 to $60,000 will be the full package. And that's all the plans, all the research, doing all the problem solving, looking at foundation issues. Do we need a new foundation? All those questions that she's going to be researching this time. We also have Bob Hawkins, William Hawkins, on her team. She brought on, and William Hawkins is kind of the preeminent historian right now for Oregon architectural history. He's a fellow AIA, and he was also friends with retired but still active, and friends with Ruth Powers. Was actually there when they moved the house. And so he said he actually even had photographs of the move from its 11th or 12th Street location. So he's being brought in as kind of an expert, and also he has a fascination and an amazing background in history on revival architecture of the 19th century in Oregon. So we're really excited. He's just going to be brought back into the project.
Super nice guy. Excellent.
The city also applied for a community development block grant through Clackamas County, and it was a $200,000 grant.
Wow.
It was turned in the middle of December, and we will find out in May if the city gets that. And I think that'll be a big catalyst grant to move forward. The other big win with this architectural engineering plans is now we can move forward on larger grant requests, especially non-heritage grant programs like Collins Foundation's Meyer Memorial Trust, because we have plans and we can say we would like this amount of money and it's going to fit into this phase of the project, whereas previously it was a lot of goodwill and commitment from general preservation organizations. We have $5,000 from the National Trust to help pay for the Annie package, $20,000 from the State Historic Preservation Office to work on phase 1 of hard costs, and hopefully this $200,000 community development block grant. But really, we need to be working with the city to see additional general fund money can be identified. But this is probably about an $800,000 project at the end of the day. So there's still a gap between what we have now.
Would all $200,000 be committed to this project?
It would.
It would.
Is there still any promise that the city of Portland will want to contribute?
That is still being working on with David Fisher, our city manager, and he's working on that. There has to be 3 Portland city councilors support, and I don't know if they have that yet. So that avenue is still being pursued. We also have a $2,500 grant from the Historic Preservation League of Oregon when we were nominated as the most endangered, one of the most 2011 most endangered buildings, and so I'm actually meeting with them recently to see it can be used to pay for this grant. This architectural engineering package, but we're also trying to see if there are ways we could use this money to look at more strategies. So I'll be working with HPLO in the next couple of weeks, trying to see if we can better leverage that money to see what we're not missing or what we can't really spend city funds on. So I'm trying to work it. But if we can't find a solution, then it will be used to help pay. But they're all partners on this project, so that's really exciting. So we are definitely moving forward. So it's nice to see there's inertia and energy, and we're moving forward.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you. Let's go to the next section.
Okay.
Alterations to landmarks.
All right.
All these things.
If you recall from the 2011 citywide survey project, Diana Painter it was 2 aspects. One was the large reconnaissance level survey where we looked at just general overview of which buildings were contributing. Those are those 1,700 properties. But the other part was just an update to our 87 landmarks. What's happened today, a lot of them were surveyed and nominated in the early 80s, some in the late 80s, and wanted to reassess what had happened to them. What I've done is done a little bit of an audit of the buildings that she identified as moving to non-contributing NC status, and I tried to figure out what happened. This isn't the definitive answer, but I wanted to give you a little update of where I see there have been holes and where I think we need to move for next steps. Some of the, and there were 4, definitely 3 buildings and maybe 4 demolished. And so you'll see in the packet the demolition and alterations findings, the third of your exhibits. That's kind of a little spreadsheet I put together that has the list of the 4 demolished properties. Let's see. You see it, this page has the 4 demolished properties, and 3 of them are located in the Park Place area, and this issue that I'm going to explain a little bit will come around numerous times, but it should be called demolition and alterations findings. Should be attached, the third attachment. The Park Place survey happened in the early 90s, and those landmarks were approved by the Historic Review Board in the mid-90s. Once Park Place was annexed to the city. A previous community development director, not Dan Drentlaw, made some interpretations that those properties, as well as some properties, landmarks in the late 80s, did not go through a legal process and should have been considered a zone change through the city commission. And so there was a period of about 7 years where there was a planning division interpretation that those properties were not designated historic, and so they were not regulated. So if someone came in for a building permit or demolition, they would not be tagged. There'd be no review. About 2005, 2006, working with Dan Drentla, our previous community development director, and our city attorneys, there was a change in interpretation, and formally we started to back to recognizing those properties as legal landmarks. There's interpretation if the code was created, 1740 was created a legal process, that a landmark can't be legally created unless it goes to the city commission, that the Historic Review Board doesn't have the legal authority to create a landmark in the sense it's an overlay district being placed on it. That is a really good semantic argument, but what our city attorney was saying, until someone legally fights that or challenges it, that we need to honor that. And so that there's been a switch. And so all those Park Place properties as of middle of this decade were brought back on and were legally regulated. And then a fair amount, I'd say maybe 20 landmarks that were in the second phase of 1980s, designations that were not part of the original comprehensive plan update in the early 80s, those were also regulated again. So you'll see in my staff comment, oftentimes you'll say see Park Place, and it happened kind of in the early 2000s or somewhere in the 1990s. We didn't regulate it. And then there'll be a couple issues where they were late 80s landmarks.
I'm frozen.
The one demolition that I should have been involved in, and I'm going to do more due diligence on, was a very, very long code enforcement project. Is the Alvin Kleinsmith house at 1038 Prospect. It was a derelict and a perfect candidate for demolition by denial, which we probably would have approved if it went through the formal process. But somehow code enforcement and building didn't bring me in on the loop. So that is something I need to get involved with. I don't know how that happened. Personally, knowing the backstory, I think that the board, I don't want to assume what the board have done, but they had a very, very good case for a demolition request if they went through formally. It had been a long neglected property. There was a lot of police activity there. I don't want to go in on not purview to all the case history, but it was a very long, drawn-out case history for neglect for that building. So that is the last one on the demolition findings, and that did happen in 2008. So I don't know how I was left out of the loop. So that's something I am still doing research on, because there was something missing in our building department. It should have been tagged, and I should have been involved. So I'm going to be doing more research on that. The other three, we would not have regulated them because they were removed at the time that we did not regulate those buildings. The second part of this document are looking at alterations. These are the properties that Diana Painter moved and identified as NC, non-contributing, for the new status. And some of them, no permits were required for the work. So it's more of just we need better communication and code enforcement. Some were based on these late 80s and late 90s and early 2000s kind of deregulation. And there are a couple that I need to perform a little more research on. What comes out of this is there are a couple that I really honestly think that the board should move to de-designate. They've been so dramatically altered that there's no reason, there's no way they can be brought back into current state. Some have been altered a lot, but as a form, they're still there and there's still hope for them to be brought back, but some have been altered so badly that they need to be removed.
Can we do it collectively, or do we have to go to the owners?
Well, I talked to Carrie Richter, our city attorney, about that, because there's, as you know, in Oregon, there's owner consent required for designation.
Yeah.
And I asked her, I said, is there any owner consent required for de-designation?
Right.
To her knowledge, there wasn't technically legally required, but she recommended on a policy level that we contact the property owners that as we move forward this spring and maybe continue to identify properties that we want to definitively move forward to de-designate, then I would work with those property owners for their signature, and I would move forward. It would all be one package, one historic review board application. I would write the findings, and you'd make a motion for all of them, and I would just include the owner consent signatures in it. So we would do all of it, but on a policy level, we would request the consent.
Because the other thing is, some of these people, I don't know, they may not even know.
I don't imagine any of them are not going to give consent, but I think it's a good policy and a good communication
Yeah,
process.
because it might perk them up thinking, oh, hey, well.
And this doesn't have to be done anytime soon,
Yeah.
but it'd be nice to keep finishing the project. So my recommendation is we keep moving forward, doing this analysis through the spring and summer, and at some point this year we have that hearing where we formally review and formally de-designate the ones that have been determined that really have irretrievable, with a big I, loss of integrity. Because there's some irretrievable, and I think you could argue that, there's still hope. So tonight I don't have any specific recommendations, so if I'd like to continue researching and give you more updates as each month goes on, kind of what I found and kind of my definitive recommendations. But what I did provide in here, and you can look through, is the survey forms for the ones that are on these forms, so you can take a look at them. Those are all, I queried the database for all the landmarks that are now identified as NC and printed those reports out. So you'll see those are the survey forms that are all NC.
Yeah, those are really thorough too. Very helpful.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, the pictures.
We can talk about it tonight. You can email me your thoughts, but at some point this spring, I think we'll get into a little more detail on that. I'm going to still, I have a pretty good relationship with the building division on planning, signing off on things, and I don't know if 08 was just the beginning of that. I'll have to do a little more research of how that demolition got caught, and if it was just a one-off odd one where they thought I was involved or they didn't catch it, or because it was through code enforcement, it went through a not normal process. So I'm doing a little post-mortem on that one. I do recommend working with the board this spring on sending out a new packet to all landmark owners, reminding them that there are landmarks, telling them that what the requirements are, and introducing them to our preservation grant program. So I'd like to do that this spring, and I will probably come back to you next month or March with a draft of what I'd like to send out.
Is there
And
money for that?
yeah, I think there's money for mailing. It would just be copying and mailing. So I think that's fine. Since there's only 87 landmarks, it's
Yeah.
not mailing out
It's not ginormous.
hundreds and hundreds of packets.
Got it.
So please let me know if you have any recommendations or on how you would want that packet to be, or how would you want to look. You can talk to me now. You can send me an email.
Got it.
I have one question about the First Congregational Church of Park Place.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure I understand what happened. It says massive alteration and addition. Consultant identified 2005 and 2007 permits non-found. Is that none found in system?
Let's go to that.
It's hard to.
Which document?
I'm looking at.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, that's none. I didn't find them in our system, so that's what I need to do some more
Okay.
research.
So
There we go.
can I assume that the massive alteration and addition was done in 2005 and 2007 by a church to a historically designated property, and it went through somehow?
No, I'm thinking potentially we have to. I could not find any permits in my system, so I need to find out from Diana where
Okay.
she got 2005 and 2007. If there were no permits and they were just, this may have been a church that turned into a single-family residence as
Okay.
well. It's a very old building.
I see.
But from what it looked like, it was basically the shell of the building may still be there, but for all intents and purposes, it looks like a new building. The only reason she could tell from the notes is the footprint looked the same. It was that, and that's going to be one of those recommendations for removal. I mean, it's really sad. Some of these have definitely been massively altered and would never have been approved through the Historic Review Board. And some of it happened because of that, the choice to not regulate those properties, and that happened. And luckily, we were able to work with our attorneys and our old community development director to restore those back to regulated status. So, but some were lost in the process.
Okie doke. Go to the next section, whatever it is. Review board goals.
Okay. It's January, so I wanted to incorporate Diana Painter's goals, and we discussed in November, and incorporate those into this year's goals from her project. I believe I caught all the goals that you wanted to pursue. One thing I didn't, for some reason, put on here, and I apologize, I'll add, is this certified local government grant, which is the following agenda on tonight's meeting. That will be applied for this year. We probably wouldn't start on it till the fall, but definitely put it on the line item as a goal to work on that grant. But let me know if you want to amend anything, but it'd be nice to vote on that today, because I can send that. All committees now are doing formalized goals that are then sent to the to the City Commission and also the Planning Commission for in response to your communication with them, so everyone kind of understands what the goals of the different committees are. So if you are ready to adopt these, if not, then we would do it next month, but we do need at some point to adopt.
The way you did it was great. It was how we took notes and made our priorities, and I didn't have a problem with it when I read through it.
Okay.
Unless somebody else. It's exactly what we talked about, from everything all the way through Kanema and the stuff we talked about with that and priorities.
Yeah.
Program, grant,
So just briefly, we have the Preservation Month.
In May,
The D-list landmarks, which I just talked about.
Yep.
Revisions to the guidelines for alterations and additions, which can start, and that really is just, that'll be an in-house, that won't be a consultant, that'll be working with the board on adding the existing and adopted Secretary of Interior standards with our guidelines for alterations and making it more user-friendly, and maybe some prettier pictures and some better diagrams. So I don't know if necessarily the content's going to change that much, but how we present it to the public will change. So that was one of the recommendations of Diana Painter, and I think that's good in the sense that we have this link to the Secretary of Interior standards, which then just kind of sends them off to the National Park Service website, which sometimes can be intimidating. Then we have our dated 20-year-old document. So I think for a lot of property owners who are doing alterations to their historic buildings, not new construction, I don't think we're giving them the tools they need unless they know exactly what they're doing. They've hired a professional. So.
I didn't have a problem with it. Did anybody?
No, I would.
We could actually.
I would move that we accept the proposed agenda.
And then with the addition of amending whatever certified local government grant program, I'll just add that on as a line item.
I'll second it.
Okay. Bob Seaver?
Aye.
I keep looking at Vicki Gates.
Aye.
Derek Metzen?
Aye.
John McLaughlin?
Aye.
Motion carries. So I will forward this to Tony Conkle and David Fresher, who will forward it on to the Planning Commission and City Commission, so they are kept in the loop on what we're doing.
Okay. Then the next thing would be, CLG.
Yeah.
Final thing.
Because Oregon City is a certified local government, what that means is the State Historic Preservation Office gets pass-through funds from the National Park Service to create what we call a certified local government program, and that's through all 50 states. And the SHPO creates qualifications of what you need to do as a city to become a certified local government. We actually were the first certified local government. We've been one for 20 years. And we've continued to keep up our certification. One of the benefits is we get to take advantage of the local matching grant program, and it's a biennium grant. It's generally about $10,000 to $12,000 on their part. We would put in $10,000 to $12,000 for $20,000 to $24,000 project. Most everything we've done consultant-wise has been through this program. The applications are due next month, but what's really nice about it is it's not competitive. The certified local government cities actually we have off years, so I'm applying with half the cities this year, and then next year the other half of the cities apply. And so for the most part, they will tell us how much money we will get as a city, and as long as our grant application meets the requirements, we will get funded. So it's really nice. We don't have to compete against the quality of every other city. And I gave a link in the commission report to the program and what things are applicable. The survey was applicable, design guidelines are applicable, and one thing that was discussed at the Planning Commission work session with the Historic Review Board was an idea of trying to help property owners, especially in Main Street, Oregon City, move forward with National Register listing. And one idea that Lloyd Purdy and I have been talking about is using this grant money and partnering with Main Street, Oregon City to come up with a grant approach for Main Street buildings. And a unique angle for this, I think, would be really creative, and that is, instead of a National Register district, which has its own baggage and kind of pulls everybody in, especially people who don't want to be, and then there's individual people listing their individual buildings, which can get expensive. There's kind of this middle process, which more and more main streets that are a little contentious are moving forward to, and that's called a multiple property submission. So you start with the main multiple property document, which has the general context statement of downtown Oregon City. It reads a lot like a district nomination, but instead of just applying all the district survey forms, you have a little bit beefed up, more than a survey form, and it's more than what you would see on a district nomination for individual property, but less than you'd see from an individual property. So it kind of splits the difference. So what we'd have is the grant would pay for the main document, and then we'd potentially work with the property owners downtown to help pay a percentage of their costs. They'd kind of paid a little skin in the game to put some money up for their individual buildings. So at the end of this process, we may have the multiple property submission and maybe 4 buildings added, and then over time, new buildings can be added to that. The cost and the length of any new building to the multiple property submission, even 5 years from now, is much less than a full nomination. So it really sets the stage for easy nomination for downtown property owners when specific property owners want to be nominated.
What are those costs?
Good question. I've been doing a little bit of preliminary work. Usually you try to find that small one-person professional company who just does nominations. You don't look for the full service. An individual nomination can be $3,000 to $5,000, $3,000 to $6,000, sometimes $7,000 if it's really complicated. So I'm thinking for $20,000, $24,000 we can get the full multiple property submission in many buildings. And working with the property owners, we can make sure, we don't know what the percentage would be with Main Street, but Lloyd definitely wants to see some owner commitment to the fees. So one nice thing about this Certified Local Government Grant, all these details don't have to be resolved this month. So we can write the grant, give them the general gist of what we want to do, and then work with Main Street and the property owners to come up kind of with the scoping and program. But it would be a nice way for the Historic Review Board and the Main Street Oregon City members to kind of have a nice joint win-win program.
Do we know what it would cost to designate a particular building after the
No,
entire
I don't.
industry?
But it would be, I would say, from what I've heard, 50% the cost of a National Register nomination.
All right.
Yeah,
So
we talked about that in West Lynn. There's a couple of neighborhoods where there's really nice homes as a multiple property designation, but everything is not warranted for a neighborhood district thing.
Right.
It's a good way to go.
Yeah, and it's great. And I haven't seen it done in a downtown, because usually downtowns are district. Because the one really nice thing about a district is the work's all done. And if you are a property owner and you already consider contributing in a district, you can just start with your federal tax credit application if you want to do a tax credit program. You don't have to do any more of proving your historic status. You already get past go, where everybody else has to spend the time to get on the National Register, get acknowledged, and then start the tax credit process. So sometimes you can do it concurrently, but there's a little iffiness to that. So that's the really nice part, is getting it all set up so it's really easy just to add on. And I think Lloyd has spoken to many property owners downtown, and for the first time, multiple people have shown they're interested in learning more. So I think this would be a really great project. So that's my speech. Not saying that you can disagree, and if you have another project you think definitely could be used.
No, Main Street needs to be something.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You know,
Even though there's a lot of junk down there.
and the one thing is this certified local government program is they want this grant money to be used on kind of the money to have the most impact. So it's not meant to be a bricks and mortar project, though you can, if you have an individual building already listed on the National Register, you can do a bricks and mortar, but they really like to see surveys or design guidelines or something, or nominations, something that'll be a catalyst and have an impact on more than one property. And it would definitely meet their criteria. So that's something. I'll be meeting with Lloyd Purdy soon to see details. If it all falls through, I don't know if I have any other ideas for a backup plan. We really have a lot of, our surveys all done. We're going to be working with GIS to get the reconnaissance level survey data online in our new, when we release our new GIS online mapping program. We have a brand new program that's going to be going live this spring. Maybe not exactly this spring, but my goal is to have that survey data as a layer, so you could click on it and then pretty quickly see contributing, non-contributing for all those 1,700 properties, which will be great because the public and the city could quickly get that data for any project to see what the impacts would be. We could, if we had to, we could turn something in for our design guidelines for alterations, but I think that can be done in-house. So there's always educational. I guess we could, throw some money in for an educational program if we wanted to, if this didn't move forward. But I think this multiple property submission is kind of our way to get downtown designated without creating a district.
That would be good. Go forward.
All right.
Okay.
That's it.
Anything else? So I can formally close the meeting then? Yeah?